Chapter 1. The Apartment 9B. The door creaked as it slowly climbed to the 9th floor. Emily stood inside, holding a cardboard box labeled kitchen stuff, her phone's flashlight in her hand. The hallway above was supposed to be well lit, but when the door slid open, she was greeted only by the half-dead bulbs buzzing like tired insects. A gentle smell of burnt dust and something sweet, lavender, lingered in the air. Her new apartment, 9B, lay at the end of the narrow corridors. The door slightly off color compared to the rest, a shade darker, as if it had been replaced once and never repainted. The brass numbers on it tilted sideways, as if trying to slide off the wooden floor. Emily looked nervously at the door. "Home," she whispered. She pushed the key in, and the door gave way with a sigh, a long, heavy exhale of stale air. Inside, everything looked normal enough. A small studio apartment, beige walls, a single window, and a faint hum of the refrigerator in the corner. But something about the silence felt too deep, like it had been waiting for her to speak first. By 11 p.m., she had unpacked a few boxes, munched on instant noodles, and played a podcast to fill the emptiness. Yet even with the voice of her roommates talking about true crime through her phone, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She kept glancing at the mirror on the wardrobe. It reflected her back, but sometimes, out of the corner of her eye, her reflection seemed imperfectly aligned. When midnight came, the power flickered. The podcast stopped. Silence again. Then she heard it, soft, deliberate tapping. Tap, tap, tap. She looked toward the window. Nothing. The sound stopped when she moved. Her heart thudded hard enough to make her feel dizzy. Emily took her phone, turned on the flashlight, and slowly swept the beam around the room. Empty. But when she pointed it toward the wardrobe, the tapping resumed faster now. Tap dash tap dash tap dash tap dot dot. She froze. The light trembled in her hand. "Hello," she whispered. No response. She reached for the wardrobe handle. Her fingers brushed cold metal. The smell of lavender hit her again, sweeter this time, almost choking. She pulled the door open. Nothing. Just her clothes hanging limp, a suitcase on the floor, and a single box she didn't recognize. It wasn't hers. The box was old, wrapped with yellowing tape. On top, in faded ink, someone had written, "Do not open, 9B." Emily's pulse roared in her ears. She crouched down, staring at it, debating whether to touch it. Then her phone screen lit up, unknown number calling. She hesitated, answered. A woman's voice, trembling, whispered from the other end. "Please tell me you didn't open the box." Static. Then the call ended. The wardrobe door creaked again, this time, alone. Chapter 2. The box. The cardboard box sat in the center of the living room, sealed with brown tape. Emily stared at it for hours that night, unsure why it made her uneasy. The label read "kitchen stuff," written in her own handwriting, yet she couldn't remember packing it. Maybe it was just exhaustion from the move, she told herself. But every time she passed by, she heard something shift inside. Not the clink of mugs or spoons, it was softer, wet. By midnight, the apartment had grown silent. No traffic, no hum from the fridge, only the ticking clock and that faint sound from the box. Tap, shuffled tap. She sat across from it on the couch, gripping her phone flashlight. "Okay," she whispered, "let's end this." The tape tore slowly under her fingers. The echo filled the room. A faint smell of damp soil and rust crept out. Beneath layers of newspaper sat a small wooden chest, old, dark, with iron hinges and a keyhole. Emily frowned. She'd never owned anything like this. Her handwriting was clearly on the box, yet she couldn't recall packing or even seeing this chest before. It felt warm when she lifted it, heavier than expected. Something faintly vibrated inside. Her thumb brushed the lock, and it clicked open. The lid creaked. Inside lay a bundle of old photographs tied with black string. Dusty, faded. The top photo stopped her breath. It was her apartment, but older. The wallpaper was different, the lights dim, and in the corner stood a woman, her face turned to the wall. Emily flipped to the next one. The same apartment, the same woman, now closer. Each photo showed her moving, inch by inch, through the years, until the last one. The woman was gone. Instead, the photo showed Emily, standing in the doorway, holding that same box. Her pulse raced. No, that's impossible. She searched the chest again and found a small silver key. Its tag read, 9B, keep locked. On the back, written in red ink, was a date, March 3rd, 1997. Her heart stopped. That was the same date on her lease, 28 years ago, except she had signed it only last week. Then, 3 knocks, sharp. Emily froze. 2 a.m. No one should be there. Another knock, softer. Then, a whisper through the door. Don't open the box again. Her breath caught. The chest on the table sat open. The photos fluttered as if touched by wind, though every window was shut. The lights flickered, and in the black reflection of the TV screen, a woman stood behind her. Long hair, pale face turned toward Emily. Emily didn't move, couldn't breathe. The whisper came again, this time right beside her ear. You were never supposed to unpack it. Chapter 3, The Whisper. Emily barely slept that night. She lay on her side, staring at the faint glow slipping through the blinds. The apartment felt strangely silent, heavier than usual, as if the air itself was waiting for something to happen. Even the normal night sounds, the fridge, the pipes, the distant traffic had completely stopped. At 2:37 a.m., the first whisper came. Emily. Her eyes flew open. The voice sounded exactly like her, but stretched a little, like someone had tried to copy her tone and didn't get it perfectly right. She sat up slowly, heart pounding. Emily, don't look at it. The whisper wasn't coming from the doorway or the window. It was coming from inside the wall beside her bed. Emily grabbed her phone, switching on the flashlight. The trembling beam moved across the room, landing on the dresser, the curtains, the corner chair. Nothing. No movement. No shadow. No one. Then the whisper returned, closer this time, brushing her ear like a cold breath. You shouldn't have opened the chest. Emily jumped out of bed, stumbling into the hallway. The moment she stepped out, the air felt colder, almost thick, like she had walked into a place she wasn't supposed to be. The walls behind her seemed to shudder quietly, as if responding to her presence. She pressed her ear to the hallway wall despite her fear. A voice whispered from the other side. You left me alone for years. Emily gasped and stepped back. No, this isn't real. The wall exhaled. A cold, soft breath touched her cheek. Emily froze. Then her own voice whispered again, but darker, layered with another tone beneath it. Go to the door, Emily. She's been waiting. Emily turned slowly toward the end of the hall. The third door was there again. Old, wooden, cracked. Its surface swollen like something had pushed from behind it for a long time. The hallway around it felt narrower, as if the apartment had rearranged itself just to make space for that door. The silver key in her pocket grew warm, pulsing softly. I'm not opening that, she said, shaking. The lights flickered hard. The picture frames on the wall rattled and fell, sliding across the floor until they formed a line pointing directly to the old door. The ceiling creaked. The floorboards trembled under her feet. Then, knock, knock, knock. Slow, heavy, almost patient. Her phone buzzed with a new photo notification. She lifted it with trembling fingers. The picture showed her own back standing exactly where she was now, and behind her stood a woman with long black hair covering her face, leaning toward Emily's ear, whispering something unseen. Emily spun around. Nothing, but she felt cold breath behind her, and then the old wooden door at the end of the hall clicked. Unlocked. Chapter 4. The Tenant Before Me. Emily stepped into the hallway the next morning, hoping a walk to the mailbox would clear her head. She had barely slept. The whispers from the walls had kept her awake until dawn. As she reached the dim corridor, she noticed Mrs. Collins from 9A standing unusually still, as if waiting for her. "You're the new tenant in 9B, aren't you?" the old woman asked. Emily nodded. "Yes." Mrs. Collins studied her with a careful, uneasy gaze. "A young woman lived there before you. She disappeared. Police said she took her own life." A cold pulse moved through Emily. "Disappeared? What do you mean?" The neighbor leaned closer, lowering her voice. "They found her in the apartment, but the way she died, nobody here believes it was by her own hand." Emily swallowed. "Why not?" Mrs. Collins glanced down the hallway toward 9B, as if the door itself might be listening. She complained about strange things, knocking inside the walls, footsteps in the kitchen at night, and voices, always at night, always calling her name. Emily felt her stomach knot. Old buildings make noises, but Mrs. Collins shook her head sharply. "Not like this." She said something was living inside that apartment, something that wanted her attention. Emily's skin prickled. Did she leave anything behind? Anything unusual? Her family cleared out most of her belongings, Mrs. Collins whispered. But there was one thing she struggled with the night before she died. A cardboard box, brown tape around it. She dragged it out of the kitchen at midnight, crying. She said it wasn't hers. Emily's heart froze. A box. What was written on it? Mrs. Collins hesitated. "Kitchen stuff. The same words you told your friend you saw on yours." Emily blinked. "I didn't tell you that." The old woman said nothing. Her eyes were heavy with something like fear. She swore she didn't have that box, didn't recognize the handwriting. She said it kept showing up where she didn't leave it. Emily's breath grew shallow. She remembered how her own box had appeared in the living room, even though she didn't recall packing it. "What was her name?" Emily asked. Mrs. Collins finally answered, voice shaking. "Emily." A tremor ran down Emily's spine. The hallway lights flickered above them, buzzing nervously. For a heartbeat, the air felt charged, as if the building itself reacted to the name. Mrs. Collins stepped back. "Listen to me. If you start hearing your name from inside that apartment, don't ignore it. Don't stay alone. The girl before you tried to pretend she was imagining things, and whatever was in 9B didn't let her go." Emily turned slowly toward her apartment door. The metal numbers 9B glowed faintly under the trembling light. For the first time since she moved in, she felt as if the door wasn't just a door. It was watching her. Chapter 5. The Mirror. Emily avoided the bathroom mirror all morning. Each time she passed it, a tightness formed in her chest, as if something behind the glass waited for her attention. By afternoon, she forced herself to face it. She stepped inside, switched on the light, and looked directly at her reflection. Everything seemed normal at first. The tired eyes, the messy hair, the pale skin from nights of broken sleep. She leaned closer, trying to steady her breathing. Then her reflection blinked. A moment too late, Emily stumbled back, heart pounding. She waited for her reflection to correct itself, but the image simply stared back, unmoving. "You're imagining it," she whispered. "Just stress." She reached for the switch to turn off the light, but froze. Her reflection moved again. Not a full shift, just the slightest tilt of the head, completely out of sync with her own. A cold ripple ran through her body. She grabbed a towel and covered the mirror, draping it over the glass until her reflection disappeared. The room instantly felt lighter, as if something unseen loosened its grip. But the relief lasted only a few seconds. Tap. Emily stiffened. Tappy tap. The sound came from behind the towel, from inside the mirror. No, she breathed. The tapping grew clearer, slow, deliberate, almost polite. 3 taps, a pause, then 2 more. A rhythm no building should make. Panic rising, she backed out of the bathroom and shut the door hard. She pressed her back against it, feeling her heart hammering beneath her ribs. For a moment, silence. Then, tap, tap, tap. The knocks came from the other side of the door now, steady and purposeful. Emily staggered backward, staring at the door as if it might open on its own. She grabbed her phone with trembling hands, switched to the camera, and pointed it toward the hallway. The bathroom door looked still and harmless, yet the tapping continued. She zoomed in. The doorknob twitched. Emily's breath hitched. She felt her legs weaken, every instinct screaming at her to run. But she couldn't look away. Then the tapping stopped. A heavy silence filled the apartment, the kind of silence that felt aware. Emily lowered her phone. A whisper came from behind the door. Softly close. Her name. Not spoken, but breathed, like someone pressing their lips to a cold surface. Emily stumbled back, grabbed her keys, and rushed toward the exit. Before leaving, she couldn't help glancing down the hallway. The bathroom door was slightly open. The towel she had placed over the mirror now lay crumpled on the floor. And the mirror, impossibly, was no longer reflecting her hallway, but a dim, unfamiliar room she had never seen before. Chapter 6: The Therapist. By morning, Emily felt hollow. She had barely slept, waking to faint tapping that seemed to drift from inside the walls. Her reflection, or whatever was pretending to be her, lingered in her mind like a threat. She needed help, someone outside the building, someone the apartment couldn't influence. By noon, she forced herself into the city and booked an emergency session with a psychologist, Dr. Marin Hawley. The clinic was warm, bright, completely opposite of 9B. Yet Emily still felt the same coldness clinging to her skin. Dr. Hawley studied her gently. "You seem frightened. Start wherever you can." Emily sat stiffly, twisting her fingers. "Things are happening in my apartment. I'm hearing whispers, seeing things move." The mirror, she stopped, unsure how insane she sounded. "I don't know if it's the building or me." Dr. Hawley listened quietly as Emily described the tapping, the voice that sounded like hers, the box she didn't remember packing, and the mirror that shifted on its own. When she finished, silence pressed against her. "Emily," Dr. Hawley finally asked, "have you experienced memory gaps? Missing hours?" Emily frowned. "No." But then small cracks appeared in her certainty. Lights she didn't remember turning on. Doors closed that she was sure were open. The sealed box. The whispers that knew her name. Maybe. "A few things," she admitted. Dr. Hawley leaned forward. "I want you to try something. Close your eyes. Walk through your apartment in your mind." Slowly, Emily inhaled shakily and pictured the entrance. The living room, the hallway, the bathroom door she avoided. But then something appeared that didn't belong. A small, dark door beside the kitchen wall. A door she had never seen in real life. Her eyes shot open. "What did you see?" Dr. Hawley asked. "A door," Emily whispered. "But it shouldn't be there. It isn't there." "Sometimes the mind hides things," Dr. Hawley said softly. "Sometimes it shows us what we're not ready to face." Emily felt lightheaded. The room seemed to tilt. Dr. Hawley scribbled a note, then handed her a small notebook. "Keep a diary, write everything unusual, no matter how small, and if you lose time again, call me immediately." Emily nodded. though her hands trembled as she stepped into the clinic hallway. Her phone buzzed with a new voicemail. The timestamp made her stomach drop. It had arrived during her appointment. She pressed play, a faint breath. Then her own voice whispered, "Why did you leave?" Emily froze. She hadn't touched her phone. She hadn't spoken. She had been sitting right in front of Dr. Halley the entire time. But her voice, from somewhere back inside the apartment, had called her home. Chapter 7: The Lavender Room. Emily pushed the wardrobe aside, her arms shaking from fear more than effort. The heavy wooden frame scraped across the floor with a long groan, a sound that seemed too loud in the silent apartment. For days she had felt a cold draft from behind it, a whisper of air that didn't belong in a sealed room. She kept ignoring it, hoping it was just the building settling. But now the reason stood in front of her. Behind the wardrobe, a thin outline of a door appeared, edges buried beneath cracked layers of paint. Whoever covered it had wanted it forgotten. Emily's stomach twisted. The draft seeped through the cracks, carrying a faint, sweet smell. Lavender. She leaned closer, pulse thudding. "Why hide a door?" she whispered. Her nails dug into the paint. It chipped off in brutal flakes. With a few more pulls, the hidden door creaked open, the sound long and strained, as if it hadn't moved for decades. Lavender flooded out, thick, sweet, almost choking. Beneath the floral scent, Emily sensed something older, something trying to stay buried. The room inside was barely larger than a closet. Lavender sachets hung from the ceiling on faded ribbons. Bowls filled with dried lavender lined the corners. Bundles were tucked behind small pieces of old furniture. Whoever used this room hadn't just liked lavender, they depended on it, as if masking something else. Then Emily noticed the walls. They were covered in photographs. Dozens, maybe 100. Every single one of her. Her breath caught. Some photos were recent, taken around the apartment building. Others were older. Her leaving work, standing at a bus stop, shopping at a store she barely remembered. All taken from a distance, all without her noticing. Her fingers trembled as she picked one off the wall. The timestamp read, 2 years before she moved into this apartment. Her body went cold. "This can't be real," she whispered. In the center of the room stood a small wooden chair. On it rested a fresh bundle of lavender, greener, brighter, and clearly newer than everything else around it. Someone had placed it there recently. Someone who still had access to this room. A chill crept up her neck. She stepped back carefully, afraid even her breathing might disturb whatever presence lingered here. The hanging sachets swayed lightly, though she hadn't touched them. Then she heard it. A floorboard outside. Soft, slow, deliberate. Someone was in the apartment. Emily froze. Her heart pounded so loudly she feared whoever was out there could hear it. The air in the small room felt suddenly heavy, charged, as if the apartment itself had stopped moving, waiting. She turned slowly toward the doorway, every nerve in her body screaming. She was no longer alone. Chapter 8: The Calls. Emily woke before sunrise, stirred by the soft, vibrating buzz of her phone on the nightstand. The room was dark, silent, and cold. Her eyes barely opened, but the screen glowed beside her pillow like a small, unwelcoming portal. Unknown number. Again. The call pulsed like a heartbeat, steady and relentless. She let it ring, refusing to touch it. When it finally stopped, only for a brief second, it began again. Same number, same persistence, as if it knew she was watching. Finally, trembling, she answered, her hands shaking so much she could barely hold the phone. At first there was nothing but thin static, like distant wind scraping along metal. Then a voice came, soft, deliberate, chilling. "You're awake." Emily froze. She hadn't spoken. She hadn't even moved. How could it know? Her breath caught in her throat, and her chest tightened. She hung up. The phone rang again immediately, each vibration sending a shiver down her spine. This time she answered, voice shaking, "Stop calling me. Leave me alone." Silence. Then a slow, deliberate exhale, unnervingly close, as though someone were leaning over her shoulder. "You're alone." Her heart slammed in her chest. She pressed herself against the headboard, gripping the blanket tightly, knuckles white. You shouldn't have opened the door. The lavender room, the photographs on the walls, the fresh lavender bundle on the chair. Her stomach twisted into knots. "What do you want?" she whispered, voice trembling. The voice softened, almost intimate, like it knew her fears before she could even think them. "You want to run." Emily's blood ran cold. She had thought those exact words moments ago, inside her mind. She hadn't spoken them. The voice wasn't guessing. It was reading her thoughts. She slammed the phone down. Silence fell, thick and suffocating. Then the phone vibrated violently again, buzzing like an insect trapped in glass. Emily stepped back slowly, terrified, unable to look. Finally, the buzzing stopped. A single notification glowed on the screen. One new voicemail. Her fingers trembled as she pressed play. The message was her own voice, panicked, whispering, "Don't go into the hallway." Emily's throat went dry. She hadn't recorded this. She hadn't whispered it. And she was already standing in the hallway when the message played. At the far end, shadows shifted, just slightly, like someone stepping back, hiding deeper in darkness, watching. Her stomach churned as a cold realization struck. The unknown number wasn't calling from a distance. It was here, inside the building, inside the apartment, listening, waiting. The phone buzzed again, unrelenting, like it had a mind of its own. Unknown number calling once more. Emily pressed herself against the wall, heart hammering violently, praying for an escape, for a way out of the building. And then she heard it, soft, deliberate, almost casual footsteps approaching from the living room. She wasn't alone. Chapter 9, The Other Emily. Emily sat on the edge of her bed, hands trembling, heart pounding. Her therapist's words repeated in her mind, sharp and impossible. "You've been reported missing for weeks, and someone else is living in 9B under your name." She blinked, certain she had misheard. What do you mean?" Her therapist leaned forward, voice low and steady. "There are reports, records, and even surveillance confirming it. Neighbors have seen someone entering your apartment, your face, your habits, your routines. But it isn't you." Emily's stomach churned. She had noticed subtle changes in her apartment. Objects slightly moved, doors ajar, the persistent scent of lavender that wasn't hers. She had thought she was losing her mind, imagining things. Are you saying there's another me?" she whispered. Disbelief and fear tangled together. "I don't know how," her therapist said, "but all evidence points to it. Someone has been living your life while you've been missing. It's as if she's replacing you entirely, step by step." Emily's mind raced. The hidden lavender room, the photographs, the unknown number calls. It all made sense now. Someone had been inside, watching her, learning her, moving in her apartment, occupying her life while she believed she was alone. Her hands shook as she ran them through her hair. "But how is this even possible? How can someone exist as me?" Her therapist's gaze was steady. "I cannot explain the how, but I can tell you this. She is meticulous, observing every detail of your life. She mimics your movements, your thoughts, your habits. She anticipates your fears, your choices, even your smallest impulses. And if she is inside your life now, every step you take could be anticipated, mirrored, controlled. Eventually, she could take everything from you, your apartment, Your identity, your life. Emily's chest tightened. The calls, the whispering voice on the line that always knew her thoughts. The shadows she had glimpsed in the hallway. It wasn't random. The unknown number wasn't just a stalker. It was her, or a copy of her. Watching, learning, controlling. You must understand, her therapist said softly. You are not imagining this. And you are not powerless. But one wrong move could alert her. She is already inside your life, and she knows more than you realize. She is patient, waiting, learning, preparing. Emily swallowed hard. The lavender room, the photographs, the fresh lavender bundles, all evidence of someone obsessively inhabiting her life, existing in her apartment, in her routines, as her. A chill ran down her spine. She thought of the calls, the shadows, the subtle shifts she had ignored. Someone else was living her life, and that someone was learning her, watching, waiting. Chapter 10, The Night of the Tapping. The room had grown impossibly cold. Emily's breath fogged in the air, and every shadow seemed to twist in impossible shapes. From somewhere deep inside the walls came a faint tapping. At first, she thought it was the wind, a branch scratching the glass. Something ordinary, but the sound had rhythm, a deliberate, mocking beat that echoed through her bones. She froze, heart hammering, as her eyes were drawn to the mirror across the room. Her reflection moved differently, not perfectly like her, but independently, deliberately. It smiled, a cruel, unnatural smile that didn't belong to her. Its lips parted slowly, revealing teeth sharper, darker than human. You shouldn't have opened the box, it whispered. The voice was hers, yet not hers, wrapping around her mind like smoke, cold and invasive. Emily's hands shook uncontrollably as she stepped back, tripping over the rug. But the reflection's eyes followed her, glowing faintly, hungry. The cursed box she had tried to forget shifted atop the wardrobe. Its lid creaked open slowly, as if the mirror had willed it so. Inside, something dark and pulsating throbbed, almost alive, sensing with the relentless tapping that now seemed to come from every surface. Emily felt the walls press closer, the ceiling droop, the floor tremble beneath her feet. Panic clawed at her throat, but she couldn't look away. The tapping became louder, sharper, echoing like thousands of tiny fingers drumming on her sanity. Every nerve in her body screamed to run. Yet the door was gone, replaced by a solid wall of shadow. Her reflection leaned forward, lips brushing the glass. It was never meant for you, it hissed, voice soft yet cruel. Its grin stretched impossibly, and Emily felt her mind shatter a little, teetering on the edge between fear and fascination. She stumbled backward, clutching the box. The pulsing inside seemed alive, reaching out, calling her, warning her, threatening her. The reflection mimicked her every movement, but with intent, anticipation, malice. Its eyes glowed brighter, and the shadows around it deepened, writhing. The room itself seemed to bend, warp, time stretching thin, elongating every second into an eternity. Then, as the tapping rose to a deafening rhythm, the reflection's grin widened, almost triumphant. It begins tonight, it whispered. Emily screamed, a sound swallowed immediately, leaving her trapped in the room with the relentless tapping and the creature that wore her face. The darkness seemed to pulse, and Emily realized with a shudder that she might never escape not the room, not the mirror, not the tapping that now beat in time with her own terrified heart. Chapter 11, The Box Opens Again. Emily sat on the floor, her back pressed against the cold wall, staring at the box. It had shifted again, almost of its own volition. The lid slightly ajar, as though inviting her to look inside. Her hands trembled as she reached forward, the faint tapping from the walls still echoing in her ears. It had not stopped since the night in front of the mirror. It had grown louder, more insistent, threading itself into her thoughts, following her wherever she went. The box was smaller than she remembered, but the shadows inside seemed impossibly deep. Her fingers grazed the lid, and a shiver ran through her body. She knew she shouldn't. That some part of her mind screamed in warning, but another part, curious, drawn, compelled, pushed her forward. With a soft creak, she lifted the lid. Inside, Emily froze. A photograph lay folded neatly on the bottom, its edges curled slightly, old and yet impossibly new. She picked it up with shaking hands. The image made her blood run cold. It was her sleeping, in her own bed, from last night. Her breath caught. She had taken no photos, had not seen anyone take a photo. Yet there it was, the unmistakable curve of her cheek. The tangled hair spread across the pillow. The faint line of worry etched into her brow. She turned it over. But the back was blank, smooth, untouched. She held it closer, feeling the unnatural chill seep through her fingers, through her skin, as if the photograph were alive. A piece of something larger, something watching. The tapping shifted, louder, closer. Now coming not from the walls, but from inside the box itself. Emily dropped the photo, but it floated up, hovering above the box for a heartbeat before sliding back inside. She felt her heart pound in her chest, her lungs tightening. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. She had seen herself in the mirror twice now, but this was different. This was proof that whatever haunted her was not just a reflection. It could reach through walls, through wood, through the small gap between reality and nightmare. Her hands shook, and she wanted to slam the lid shut, to run, to forget everything she had seen. But the box pulsed in her hands as if it had a heartbeat, and she could hear it, faint but unmistakable, sensing with her own. The tapping rose to a frenzied rhythm, faster, sharper, calling, mocking. The room seemed to shrink, the air thickening, pressing against her chest, stealing her breath. Emily backed away, her eyes darting around the room. Shadows writhed unnaturally, stretching toward her as if alive. And then, from the corner of her vision, she saw it, a faint silhouette, her own face, watching her from the darkness. Her reflection in the box had moved again. The photograph was no longer safe. The box was no longer just a box. It was a gateway, and tonight it wanted her. Emily clutched the box to her chest as she stepped into the elevator. The tapping from the walls had slowed, but it lingered in her mind like a heartbeat she could not escape. She needed answers. She needed proof. She had to know what was happening, what this building was hiding, and why the mirror, the box, and the photograph all seemed connected. The elevator hummed, lights flickering as it rose past the familiar floors she knew, past the 8th floor, which should have been the top. The panel displayed a number that shouldn't exist, 9, a single, glowing digit that pulsed faintly, like it was alive. She pressed the button again, her finger trembling, and the doors slid open with a metallic sigh. She stepped out into a hallway that was nothing like the rest of the building. The carpet was threadbare, stained in dark, indiscernible patterns, and the walls were a sickly, faded lavender that seemed to hum with a faint vibration. The air smelled cold, damp, and metallic. She began to walk. Every step felt heavy, as if the floor itself were pulling her downward. The tapping returned, echoing from nowhere and everywhere at once, louder than ever. At the end of the corridor, a door waited, plain and unmarked. Her reflection in the elevator doors had been watching her, but now it was gone, leaving only her own frightened image. She raised her hand to the knob. The metal was icy, shocking against her skin. Before she could turn it, a voice whispered from the shadows, soft but insistent, "You weren't meant to be here." Emily froze. She scanned the hall. but no one was there. She tried to remember the building plans, the documents she had seen online. Apartment 9B. There had been no record, no listing, no sign of it ever existing. Only 8 floors. Only 8. Yet here she was, standing in the impossible 9th. The door creaked open as she pushed, revealing a room exactly like her own apartment, but wrong. The furniture was slightly shifted. The walls cracked in patterns that were not possible. On the table lay the box, closed, untouched, as if it had been waiting for her. She stepped inside cautiously, her eyes catching glimpses of herself in mirrors that should not have existed, reflections that moved on their own. The tapping crescendoed, emanating from every surface, every shadow, every corner. Emily's stomach turned. Something about this floor, this room, this impossible apartment felt alive, aware of her presence. She could hear her own heartbeat, loud, thundering, yet the tapping overpowered it. Faster, sharper, calling her forward, urging her closer to the box. A chill ran down her spine as she realized the truth. She was not alone. She had entered a space that the building itself denied, a floor that should not exist, and something was waiting for her. The air thickened, the shadows moved. The box pulsed with a heartbeat of its own, since to hers, and Emily knew, with a cold certainty, that the 9th floor had been waiting for her all along. Chapter 13, The Return. Emily ran. She bolted down the hallway of the 9th floor, her breath ragged, heart hammering so hard it felt like it might burst from her chest. The walls seemed to stretch endlessly, warped, mocking her. She turned corners, sprinted past doorways, every step echoing in the hollow space. Yet no matter how far she ran, the same lavender carpet stretched endlessly before her. The tapping returned, faster, sharper, relentless, drumming on the floor, the walls, inside her mind. She tried the door she had entered from, desperate to escape, desperate to find the elevator back to the real world. She twisted the handle. It refused to turn. Panic clawed at her throat. She turned to find another any exit, but every door, every corner, every shadow led her back to apartment 9B. The room, the box, the mirrors, everything repeated itself, exactly the same, as if she had never left. The photographs from the box fluttered on the table, showing her sleeping, showing her waking, showing her terrified. Each image was alive, whispering her name, calling her back. Emily sank to the floor, clutching the box to her chest. She screamed, a raw, ragged sound, but it dissolved into the air, unheard. The walls shivered, shadows lengthening, twisting toward her, reaching with impossibly long fingers. The box pulsed, beating like a heart, sensing with her own. She realized with a cold dread that the box and the apartment were aware of her. They were alive. They were hungry. And no matter what she did, they would not let her leave. Hours or maybe minutes passed. Time stretched impossibly, warped. She tried closing her eyes, hoping she would wake up elsewhere, somewhere safe. But each time she opened them, she was back. The same walls, the same mirrors, the same door that led nowhere. She began to understand. This was no longer an apartment. It was a trap, a loop, a pocket of reality twisted around her fear. The tapping grew louder, overwhelming, echoing from inside her head, vibrating through her bones. She screamed again, and this time, the mirrors shivered. Her reflection, her other self, emerged, stepping forward from the glass, grinning, eyes dark, knowing. "You cannot leave," it whispered, voice echoing, layered, impossible. "Not now. Not ever." Emily tried to run, tried to hide. But the box floated before her, opening on its own, beckoning. Images of herself, sleeping, awake, frightened, terrified, lined its edges. She could feel them pulling at her, dragging her closer, Emily realized the horrifying truth. Escape was impossible. No matter which floor, which building, which door she tried, she would always return. Apartment 9B was no longer just a place, it was a living prison, a mirror to her own fear, and it had claimed her completely. And the tapping would never stop. Emily's hands shook as she clutched the box, the tapping still echoing in her skull, relentless. She had stopped running, stopped trying to escape, and now only waited, trapped in apartment 9B, a place that refused to let her exist anywhere else. In her mind, the memories of the therapist's office flickered, like broken film, an attempt at safety, at clarity, at proof that she was still human. She had to find a way to confirm that what was happening was real, or at least to document it. The next day, or maybe it was the same day. Time had no meaning here. Emily's therapist discovered something chilling. In the office, hidden beneath a stack of old files, were tapes of her sessions. They were dated, labeled carefully, as though someone had prepared them long ago. Hands trembling, the therapist placed the first tape into the player. Static hissed. The screen flickered. Emily listened, holding her breath. The voice on the tape was hers, or it should have been. But it wasn't. It was wrong. The intonation, the subtle pauses, the very rhythm of the words the voice spoke in her exact tone, her exact phrasing. Yet it was twisted. Darker, deeper, mocking. The words she remembered saying, her confessions. Her fears were there, but undercut was something alien. Something that sounded hungry. The voice laughed at her own fears, repeated her words before she could even speak them, and added sinister twists, instructions she had never given, warnings she had never heard. The therapist's hand shook as the tape rolled on, a single, impossible realization settling in. This was no recording. This was a message. Emily's eyes widened in horror. She knew, with icy clarity, that the recordings were not made by a human hand. Whoever or whatever had copied her voice had also copied her very essence. Each tape was alive, a reflection of her mind, twisted, manipulated, and perfected into something that could speak, act, and think independently. The tapping returned, faintly at first, then louder, faster, echoing from the tape itself, as if the device were breathing, pulsing, alive. She screamed. The sound merged with the static, becoming part of the recording. On the tape, her own voice whispered back to her, "You shouldn't have opened the box." The words echoed in the office, in the building, in her head, layering over her reality until she couldn't tell where the tape ended and she began. Panic surged. The box beside her pulsed violently, as though responding to the revelation. Every shadow in the room leaned closer, as if curious, as if hungry. Emily realized the terrifying truth. Someone or something had been recording her life all along. But it wasn't just observation. It was imitation, replication. And now it could speak, act, and reach beyond the box. The voice on the tape was no longer hers. Yet it was unmistakably her. It was a warning, a lure, a threat. And she knew, as the tapping echoed louder than ever, that the final tape was only the beginning. Chapter 15, The Lavender Ending. The apartment stood silent, empty, still. Dust lay thick on the floors, and the faint hum of the city outside barely penetrated the walls. Apartment 9B, as always, looked ordinary. Yet Emily, or whoever had been trapped within, was gone. The box remained on the floor, closed, pulsing faintly, a heartbeat in the shadows, as if it had been waiting, patient for the next visitor. The mirrors reflected only what should be there: empty rooms, untouched furniture, the faint lavender stain on the carpet where time had blurred the edges. A new tenant arrived that evening. She carried a small suitcase, keys jingling, unaware of the apartment's history. unaware of the pulse of life that lingered in its walls. The elevator hummed as it rose past the 8th floor, and she stepped onto the 9th floor with a sense of quiet anticipation. The hallway smelled faintly sweet, faintly floral. Lavender. She paused, sniffing instinctively, but shrugged it off. Perhaps a leftover air freshener, a decorative candle, anything ordinary, anything explainable. As she slid the key into the door of apartment 9B, the box in the corner seemed to stir, though she saw nothing. The room welcomed her. The walls, the carpet, the faint glow of the fading daylight, it all seemed normal. The mirrors reflected her face, her eyes wide with cautious curiosity. Yet somewhere deep, in the corners of her perception, she felt it, a subtle vibration, like a heartbeat, like the room itself inhaling and exhaling. She did not see, and yet she sensed, that this apartment had a memory, that it had a will, that it had been waiting. The scent of lavender filled the air, stronger now, curling around her like a whisper. It was sweet, nostalgic, calming, and yet beneath it, there was something darker, something that hinted at what had come before. A box sat closed in the corner, waiting, patient, pulsing softly, like a creature breathing in its den. She could not know what it held, nor the force that resided there. She might unpack her suitcase, arrange her belongings, make the apartment her own, but she would not be alone. She would never be alone. The city outside continued its indifferent hum. Lights blinked in distant windows. Cars rolled past, unaware of the tiny nightmare lurking within the walls of apartment 9B. The lavender scent grew stronger, wrapping around the new tenant like a promise, a lure. And somewhere, deep in the quiet, the box pulsed, a slow, patient rhythm, waiting for the night to fall, waiting for the tapping to begin once more. Apartment 9B would endure. It would remember. It would claim again. And the lavender sweet, fragrant, deceptively gentle would return, carrying with it the echoes of those who had vanished, trapped in its endless, quiet, patient nightmare.